Welcome back to the DreamApp YouTube channel. My name is Jesse Lyon, Chief Dream Scientist, and today we're talking about the secret symbols in the Sandman that you probably missed. So before we get started, I know the things you probably want to hear the most about are the ruby, the helm, and the sand. There are so many deep and impactful symbolism elements that relate to those that I need to tell you about. But before we do, I've got to have a little moment. I've got to have a little shout out for our boy, Matthew, the Raven, right? And before we jump into this, if you haven't seen the Sandman, there will 100% be spoilers in this. We're talking very deeply from beginning to end about all the episodes, what they mean, and what you probably missed from me as a dream scientist. Like I said, the show would not be complete without talking about Matthew the Raven. And Matthew the Raven is incredibly important to the storyline, one, but also has some deep symbolism that most people probably don't understand. Ravens have been a symbol for human beings for eons. We've been talking about ravens and using ravens in stories since really before modern writing and technology was even invented. I think one of the best cases of understanding is that Norse mythology has talked about the raven since kind of its invention as well. So, but what does it mean? A raven is very symbolic for insight. Now, with that insight comes kind of the negative sort of shadow of the raven. If you think about like Edgar Allan Poe and, Nevermore, quoth the raven, right? Remember that poem from high school, middle school? It can be a little dark. And the raven, because it's all about insight and really having that vision into the future that ravens can have, they can kind of predict some things that are sad, because really when you look far enough into the future, you're always going to find death. And death is not a bad thing, but it's the end. And if you look far enough forward, you'll always find the end of whatever experience you're having. So ravens can kind of have that sort of mystical shadow element to them just because of their symbolic nature. They mean insight. And the farther that you look into insight, you're going to recognize that certain things in your life always come to an end. But ravens, insight. And that's why it's so important that Morpheus, Dream, has a raven with him, because it provides him insight into what's going on. It gives him a second set of eyes. And in Norse mythology, this holds true as well. Norse mythology talked about Hunin and Munin, were Odin's two ravens, and Hunin and Munin would circle the globe every day and report back to Odin what was happening. Now, Hunin was from the Old Norse name, Old Norse word for thought. So this raven represented our thoughts and how our thoughts can provide us insight into the future. Munin was the Old Norse word for memory. So you can see memory provides us insight. By looking into the past, we're able to avoid mistakes that we've made back there so we can move forward with better opportunities and avoid those obstacles that probably tripped us up back there. For Odin, this was so incredibly important, because having thought and memory circle the globe, those two working together, thinking into the future and remembering the past, is the perfect tool for helping you move through the obstacles that you're facing, through those difficult patches in life, because you have enough insight into the future to know that it's going to end and that this difficult time will come to a close. And remember the strength and the abilities that you have deep inside of you that have gotten you through similar situations in the past. So for Odin and for Morpheus, Dream, this is an incredibly important symbol. And if you find it in your dream, it means exactly that. It can be foreboding and talking about things that are maybe a little bit more dark related to your dreams and the insight into the future, seeing the outcomes that we may not really want, but they're incredibly important for you. And if we really look at it deeply, the raven is almost a perfect symbol for dreams themselves, because dreams have this amazing ability of connecting our past experiences in our working process with the thoughts that we're currently going through now and how we're trying to make it into the future and overcome the things that we're facing. So the raven is just such a perfect symbol, and I'm really glad that they used it in this. Obviously, they're pulling from the DC comics, but I'm really glad that they incorporated it into the Netflix series, because it's so important to dreams, to the mythology, to the symbolism, and to the storyline itself. But now that Matthew's out of the way, he deserved the respect. What a trooper, man. Especially after what happened with that first raven. I don't know if I'd be Matthew, man, but props off, hats to him. So let's talk about the thing that you came here for, the sand. What is the sand? Why does Why does they use sand? There's so many other things. Like, couldn't he use like a sword or, a gun or a staff or something else? No, he can't. He can't, because sand is incredibly important and has some intense symbolism. Sand, in a biblical sense, represents the thoughts of the gods. Sand, you think about two things: the shifting sands that we think about in those Bible verses where it says, don't build your house upon shifting sands, build it on a solid foundation, and an hourglass, the passage of time. And so sand really has a lot to do with the power of the gods. You can try and build your house on rock and stone, and that's going to be more stable. But if you leave it up to this, the gods will move the sand and change things. And it's the passage of time that always, in the end, gets us. As much as we build these solid foundations, in the end, the unpredictability, the passage of time, the chaos of the world finally consumes us as human beings and in our life experiences. So seeing sand in a dream actually indicates that you're letting time pass you by, and that you're struggling with really grabbing onto and taking a hold of the opportunities that you're experiencing in the present. This is why it can feel like, the world is against you or fate is against you, because it's slipping through your fingers. It's missed opportunity. And so if you see this in your dream, it has a lot to do with those feelings inside of you. To be a little bit more specific, it has a lot to do with financial security and life security. What's the foundation that your life and your thoughts are based on? Because if you have a solid foundation, you'll be able to weather the storm that's going to happen in the future. So for Morpheus and for dreams, sand is the perfect tool because it really represents our mortality, our struggle to really embrace and understand, to adapt to chaos that is perfectly represented by sand. I think the greatest way to really sum up this symbol is that saying, from dust to dust. And so you see, even in some of those images and some of those scenes with Morpheus, he creates things out of sand and then dissolves them back into sand. And so it's this growing and dying, this life and cessation that is symbolized by sand that makes this tool perfect for him. He can create and destroy from dust and back to dust, all the things that he makes. And it's a symbol for our lives. And that's why you'll see these things show up in your dream, because it's symbolizing those struggles that we all have. It's a perfect metaphor. Now, what about the ruby? Wow, the ruby, one of my favorites. It's actually my birth month stone, so I'm a little bit biased. That's okay. I think it's one of the best symbols in the movie. The ruby is very powerful, and you can see when in the wrong hands of John, it causes some really dramatic problems. Now, of course, Sandman and this series comes from the DC Comics, which was, kind of originally the inspiration for this, but Neil Gaiman, a masterful storyteller, takes it and adapts it in little ways to make the Netflix series. But in the DC Comics, the Dreamstone was actually called Matteropticon, and it was used as a reality-altering weapon by the Justice League, and specifically the supervillain John Dee, aka Dr. Destiny. And so this stone not only has like a storyline of its own, but it has some deep symbolism as well. If you see a ruby in your dream, it has a lot to do with wealth and prosperity. This is a good thing. Gems in general, that's the basic meaning. Gems in general mean prosperity, wealth, opportunity. If you've got that gem in your pocket, that wealth in your pocket, you can buy your way out of tight situations. You can buy potentials and opportunity to make it out of the struggles that you're facing. You're not destitute. You're not broke because you have the jewel. Now, the ruby in particular is a red stone, and red is deeply symbolic of love, anger, passion. Right? And so you can see you have this potential power inside the stone, this wealth of opportunity symbolized by the jewel itself. But even deeper, the ruby means that there's love and passion and anger and opportunity. It really reminds us, and this is why rubies were valued so much in the beginning, it reminds us of the blood that is in all of our veins. So blood in a dream has a lot to do with our power, our ability. It's the life force inside of us. And so you can see the ruby is the life force gemstone. And that's why it's the perfect symbol inside of Sandman. It can mean all of those things inside of your dream, specifically love and anger, passion, but it can also be a symbol for sexuality, which is a really intense motivator, an intense part of being human, and you can see that in here. It's also why the ruby, I think, was used by John and had couple episodes dedicated to it, because you can see how our passions, our sexual drives, our anger, our rage can get in the way of us caring for one another, of us really working through some of our problems. And so when Morpheus is talking about how the ruby can't get into the wrong hands, that it would be too much for a mere mortal, he means exactly that. If our passions, if that unlimited wealth, unlimited power and opportunity runs away with us, it'll cloud our mind. It's raw potential and energy. You have to have the Hunin and Munin, so to speak, from Morpheus, that memory and insight in order to balance out the passion of the jewel. And so that's why alone the jewel causes destruction. And it causes, that episode was pretty graphic. It got pretty nasty at the end, just how self-destructive unbridled power and wealth can be. And that was symbolized by the jewel, only wieldable and really able to be managed by Morpheus, a god more than mortal. And that's why Dream, when he finally confronts John at the end of that episode, says, "The ruby did not do this. John merely used it to reveal wounds that were hidden but never healed." That's episode 5. It's beautiful. Now, we'll get a little more into this later, but when John is confronted by Morpheus, Morpheus takes him into this mansion to kind of fight him over the ruby and to kind of have that final duel between the two of them. The mansion is incredibly important as well, because the mansion, actually, houses in general, symbolize your psyche. And so you can see how Morpheus enters John into a dream representative of his own psyche and goes inside the mind of John, symbolized by the mansion, if you know anything about dream symbolism, in order to fight the energy, the passion, the unbridled, just potential animal rage inside of John, and to get that ruby back. And that mansion scene is just so beautiful to me. It's Morpheus fighting John inside his own mind. And I don't think many people catch that, but as a dream interpreter, that just got me really excited. I'm like, oh, they nailed that symbolism. And that's why, honestly, Neil Gaiman knows more about symbols and more about mythology than even I do. That's his passion. That's his career. That's why he's such a good story writer, because he understands the way in which symbols and the human mind puts these symbols together to form stories and compelling narratives. That's what I study. That's what Neil Gaiman studies. And he killed it on this one. Love it. So there's only one symbol left, and it's the helm. It's that weird sort of mask thing that he wears. It looks like a gas mask, right? And it's got like this spine coming out of it. Now, I actually did some research on my own about this to try and understand what was really going on here, because gas mask means something, spine means another thing, and we'll talk about that. But why are they together? And after looking into it, I found that this is actually a direct pull from the DC Comics, and it has a history and a story of its own, much like the Ruby Stone does. The design of Dream's helmet also resembles a gas mask. This is a reflection of how Neil Gaiman's The Sandman is a reboot of the Golden Age DC Comics character called the Sandman. Wesley Dodds is the original name of Morpheus the Sandman, and he was a wealthy playboy turned costumed crime fighter, kind of like Batman, right? Same sort of vibe here. Now, he wore a gas mask, and he did that because he would use this sleeping agent to put criminals to sleep and then, kind of take care of crime throughout the city. So the gas mask is used as a direct kind of reference to the DC Comics and just kind of a nod to the origin of that character in general. The gas mask helping protect him from the sleeper agent that he uses to fight criminals. Now, the spine that comes out of the gas mask is actually from a god. Dream crafted the helmet eons ago from the bones of a dead god, which explains that kind of weird appearance that it has. Now, from a more practical sort of dream standpoint, a gas mask is protection. It is just that. It is something that kind of keeps out the toxicity in your life. And so if you're seeing a gas mask in your dream, you may need to think about what's toxic in your environment that you need to protect yourself from, and maybe just get out of there. Some toxic relationships, some toxic work environments, whatever it is. And having the spine come out of the gas mask is so perfect, because a spine, think about it, grow a backbone, right? A spine is your confidence. It's what keeps you erect. It's what guides your posture, and it's what really is the backbone of your identity. So having a backbone come out of that not only is the protection, the care, and keeping out the toxicity of the thoughts and feelings of others, but it's also the strength symbolized by that backbone. And putting those two together, it makes sense. It's one of the most powerful tools that Dream has at his disposal, and makes sense why other people would want to steal it and why he had to fight in hell to get it back. Now, one of my favorite parts of the entire series was the nightmares. I know a lot of people don't like the nightmares, and a lot of people come to me because they are afraid of their nightmares and they want answers for them. But nightmares hold such a special place in my heart because nightmares are one of the greatest tools for our mental health and our growth that we have. Nightmares, if you don't know already, if you haven't been following the channel, nightmares actually help release unprocessed emotions, and it's the experience that you have while you're sleeping of your mind trying to understand and adapt to the traumas, the trials that you're facing. It will replay difficult situations in your life, your mind will, in order to help you overcome and figure out how to fix them. So nightmares are precious, and as much as they're frustrating, working through them and notating them and interpreting them is one of the most powerful tools that we have for mental health. And it's why I've dedicated my life to not only interpreting dreams, but to creating DreamApp and helping people in a free way look into this and start the exploration of their deeper self, getting those answers from their psyche. So nightmares are important, and there's two inside of the Sandman. The first one that we kind of see, well, I'm not sure if it's the first one, but the first one that we see is the Corinthian. Now, the Corinthian is very strange. You don't see it at first. He's always wearing these circle glasses, right? But he's got teeth for eyes. And to me, that's incredible because the symbolism here is the nightmare has no sight, no actual vision. It's just consumption. And so if you watch the story arc of the Corinthian in the Sandman, he kills mindlessly. He kills without insight. And at the end of the series, Morpheus confronts him saying, I didn't create you for this, for mindless killing. And I'll read that quote. I've done my best to be what you've made me. And Morpheus says, no, you've done your worst, which was in so many ways what I had hoped. You were my masterpiece, a dark mirror made to reflect everything humanity will not confront. That's what I am. That's what I've done, Corinthian reports back. Morpheus says, no, look at you, walking this earth for over a century, infecting others with your joy of death. But what have you given them? What have you wrought? Nothing. Just something else for people to be afraid of. That is all. And the Corinthian says, so what now? You send me back into their dreams? Later on in episode 10, about 3 minutes later, they continue the conversation. And he says, I brought you into this world to serve humanity, not to feed upon it. Do you know why I do it? Says the Corinthian. So I can taste what it's like to be human. And you don't care about humanity. You only care about yourself and your realm and your rules. Which I love that quote so much because it reminds me so often of what people say to me. They're like, why would my brain do this? Why would every time I go to sleep, I dream about my ex? I dream about that relative who passed away. I dream about that test that I failed. I dream about that trauma that I experienced when I was younger or not even that long ago. And there's this frustration with the nightmare because of lack of insight. And you can see the Corinthian saying this exact thing that we've all said back to the dream. Back to Sandman. Why would you do this to me? And he says, I contain the entire collective unconscious. Without my rules, it would consume me. Humanity would be consumed. He says back, or you might actually feel something. I am not the problem, dream. He says, you're right. This was my fault, not yours. I had so much hope for you, but I created you poorly then, so I must uncreate you now. And you can see how when our nightmares no longer serve their purpose, they just become consuming. And that's where the eyes being mouths is so incredible because there's no insight from nightmares. It's just consuming, eating and swallowing, nourishing itself at the expense of others without seeing what damage it causes. And so there's this accurate conversation between the two of them where nightmares are supposed to serve a purpose. They're supposed to reflect the unconscious that needs to be confronted. And there's a conversation we'll get to in the first nightmare, in the other nightmare that we see, where this is kind of played out. But without that insight into your dreams, nightmares will consume you. And that's why, gosh, for me, I've dedicated my life to this and why I interpret dreams, because when you put some eyeballs and really have some light and some insight into your nightmares, the amount of insight and the connection with your deeper self and your true emotional feelings is unparalleled. The confidence that you can get back, the peace that you can find again in your life and actually allow your dreams to process your emotions, figure out your trauma, and heal from them. I can't find anywhere else. There's no greater opportunity. But sometimes we need to go back, like Morpheus, and reinvent our nightmares, understand them, why they're here, and make sure that they're serving their purpose. And I believe that's through interpretation. When Dream confronts the other nightmare that was actually trying to be a positive influence on Jed, you see a conversation play out that I've been trying to communicate for such a long time, and Neil Gaiman does an amazing job of portraying this in this dialogue. I'm going to read it. It's from episode 8. It says, "I merely wished to be a dream, not a nightmare, to inspire rather than to frighten." Dream says, "The choice is not yours to make. We do not choose to be created, nor do we choose how we are made." "That is true," says the nightmare, "but we can change." And Dream says, "No. We are each of us born with responsibilities. Even I am not free to choose to be other than I am, nor is anyone. A nightmare's purpose is to reveal a dreamer's fears, that they may face them. Perhaps a few thousand years in darkness will reveal your fears." And the nightmare says, "Better that than to make others afraid. Even a nightmare can dream, my lord." And you see the Corinthian and the other nightmare portraying the opposite sides of nightmares. Some people want the nightmares to go away. Some people, the nightmares start to consume them. And you can see it's the faulty sides. It's the shadow of nightmares. In the middle lives the opportunity for us to confront our deepest, darkest fears and to see accurately, without judgment, inside of our dreams, inside of a safe place where we physically can't be hurt. We can confront those things that are so painful to us and see the deeper insight that our mind knows that we need. It's brilliant that our deeper self can bring these things to the surface when our conscious mind so vehemently denies them and suppresses them down. And so these nightmares become incredibly powerful, but there's a warning on either side. Too much darkness, and it consumes us. Not enough darkness, and we start to avoid, and we never face the problems that we have deep in us that call us to be better and more than we are today. Coincidentally, this was Freud's original nightmare theory. He believed that nightmares were actually wish fulfillment. Deep down inside of us was a wish to confront these things and was a wish to express our more primal and darker parts of ourselves. One interesting thing as a dream interpreter is many people tell me about police officers or being in prison, being in jail. And they're like, "Why do I have this dream?" Your mind will actually put you in prison or jail or have you be handcuffed by police officers when you're feeling guilty. If you get away with something in your waking life, your dreams will punish you because it's trying to find that balance. It's trying to bring out the insight that says, hey, you made a mistake. There's something that you need to look deeper into here that you haven't been facing. And that's pretty cool. So Freud's original theory was that nightmares are actually wishes from our unconscious that are so repressed and so subverted that the only way that it can come out is through a nightmare. One of the other nightmares that you get all the time is when you're running away from something. And Freud talked about how when you're being chased, it's actually your mind wanting to confront something, but you're running away from it. And so it depicts this pursuit that happens in your waking life where you know you need to face your problems, but you're running away from them just as fast as you can. And so you run circles in your dreams because your mind's like, hey, will you confront this problem already? And you're consciously never do. So that when you interpret them, you actually realize, oh yeah, I've been avoiding that one for a while. I need to look deeper into it. And so it's great. Fantastic job, The Sandman. If you can't tell, I'm a bit biased. I loved this series. I thought it was great, and they did a great job depicting nightmares. Now, being someone who likes things that are dark, I don't think that this conversation about The Sandman would be complete if we didn't mention Morningstar for a minute. That trip to hell, fantastic, well depicted. The Morningstar, most people misunderstand, and they're probably surprised by the way that Morningstar, Satan, looks. You know, they've got the blonde hair, the piercing eyes, female, maybe you're expecting male, but this all fits so perfectly with dream symbolism and archetypes. Satan is often referred to as Lightbringer or Morningstar, which may sound surprising, but we've been using this term for almost forever, really, because those who really study this, like ancient medicine men or religious experts or those people who study the psyche and archetypes, know that hell and Satan is actually best depicted by perfection. The enemy of life and the murderer of opportunity and growth is perfection. And so anytime that you see a really well done story, some masterful storyteller putting together a picture of evil, you'll see them use white. You'll see them use light, because infinite light, perfect purity, perfect whiteness is actually sterile. There's no opportunity for growth. It's perfect death. In blackness actually comes the opportunity for growth, comes the opportunity for new life. Out of the darkness, something comes. But if everything is white and light and sterile like a hospital, nothing grows. And that's why Morningstar is white. That's why her hair is white, and that's why her eyes are so piercing. She symbolizes perfection. Her curls are perfect. Her outfit is perfect. And so the moment that perfection becomes a struggle inside of your life and you start to try and act perfect, you are literally murdering opportunity inside of yourself. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't try and do your best. Of course you should, but having space and maintaining space for you to make mistakes and for things to be messy and dirty and to try new things is the only solution to progress. And specifically for mental health, this is why therapists inside of their practice will hold space. And they're like, I'm not going to judge you. We're just going to talk about it. We're going to bring this stuff out into the open. We're going to accept these things about you. And the biggest part of therapy is learning how to accept another human being and give them space to recognize their value outside of their attempts to be perfect. Because if you only recognize their value through their attempts to be perfect, that's more akin to hell and Satan than anything else. And that's why this scene is perfect. The scene goes on to kind of enter into a duel for Dream to get back his helm. And the surprise is that, he has to fight Satan, which he thought he was just going to fight this demon. But the interaction between the two, this duel, is so cool. It starts out with Hell summoning, kind of in their minds, a dire wolf. Dire wolf inside of your dreams has a very important meaning. It's a feminine character, which makes sense for Satan being a feminine character. The dire wolf symbolizes the pack and feeling isolated from the pack. It is ferocious, spiritual, feminine energy. And so when you dream about a wolf, it usually has a lot to do with you wondering whether you fit in. Am I a part of the pack or am I a lone wolf? A lone wolf does not survive long by themselves. They are pack animals. And so this dire wolf is a great sort of trap to set for Dream to see if he'll take that bait. But he doesn't. He sends back a hunter on a horse, which is a wonderful symbol. Horse being a symbol for your body, strength, and spiritual freedom. The hunter being someone who pierces into the darkness, who explores and lays to rest the turmoil, the chaos that might attack the city or attack his family back at home. He's going out into the unknown to bring back sustenance for his family, a perfect symbol to come back with. So then Satan comes back with, okay, serpent. Perfect. It's this perfect sort of connection between serpents being a symbol for healing and regeneration because they shed their skin and it's an opportunity to grow, but also lies and deception, which is what Satan really feeds on. And you can see how that poison seeps into Dream and starts to cause him to decay. But Dream throws it right back with a bird of prey. Bird of prey, think back to the raven that we talked about in the beginning of this episode, is insight, and it sees the lies before they even become poisonous. And so it can latch onto them with those claws and see the problems that are possibly in the future. Perfect comeback. But then Satan comes back again and says, butcher bacterium, unfeeling, destruction, death, and decay. But Dream knows with death and decay, with these negative dream symbols, come the opportunity for new life. And so he says a world. Because even in a world, butcher bacterium has the important job of decaying and breaking things down so they can be reused as nutrients in the earthly soil for plants and growth. And so you can see just this like light side, shadow side, light side, shadow side. Everything has a light side to it. Any shadow you throw at me has a light, and any light that Dream throws back has a shadow that Satan can use. And so it's this intense battle. And so Satan says back, a nova, explosion, a wonderful feminine energy sort of experience. A nova being just the absolute destruction of a star, right? Star being light and obviously light side, opportunity, vision, insight, all these things. And so nova is a cessation of that light. But Dream again knows with death comes opportunity. And so he says, the universe. It's almost a mirror. The bacteria and the world, the nova and the universe is death and the life that comes from death. Again, nova, death, universe, life that comes from death. And so they make it even a bit more clear, and Satan comes back with anti-life, death, the opposite of growth. She even says the beast of judgment, the dark at the end of everything. And she's right. She's right. And there's this moment where Dream knows that she's right, and he collapses to the ground. And even Matthew thinks that it's over for a minute because he might have bit off more than he can chew. But Dream comes back with hope. Hope is this human idea, is this experience of even in the midst of everything dark, there's still the idea and the spark of opportunity. And and Satan knows that, Morningstar knows that she can never get rid of that. And, he really drives it home. Morpheus really drives it home when he says, what power would hell have if those here imprisoned were not able to dream, were not able to hope? And so they're locked inside of this epic battle, which is what we see inside all the epic stories, all the, tales that have stood the test of time, is this epic battle between light and dark. Neither one will ever fully overcome the other because light needs darkness to dispel and darkness needs light to gather its strength, right? Without light, darkness would have nothing to fight against. And so it's this balance. And you see that inside of this. Wonderfully done. Wonderfully done. Episode 4, if you haven't seen it. So the final segment, and probably one of my favorites, is the dreams of others. As they're going through this, the vortex starts to go through people's dreams. And so you see a lot of little snippets of some really popular dreams. And I'd love to go through, and maybe some of them you really identified with because you've had. So let's talk about what they mean, and let's talk about why they were chosen specifically for the Sandman. The first one is you'll notice that everything is connected with hallways and doors. When you're moving from one place to another inside of dreams, you'll go through a doorway. Now, this is really important. Doorways and hallways show up a lot inside of dreams, and they're a symbol for a new opportunity, a stop from one place and a start to another. Whenever you're moving from one doorway to another inside of a dream, it's your mind kind of transitioning between thoughts. So you'll move from one room, which is a symbol for a thought, to another room, which is a symbol for a different thought. And so you'll see these transitions happen inside of dreams. Nailed it inside of the Sandman. Great use of that. Hallway can be very much about rebirth, right? So if you're going down a hallway, it's kind of like being birthed. It's the birthing tunnel before you are emerged out that doorway into a new life, a new scenario, whatever it may be. Those were used very intentionally as transition pieces. It reminds me of John and going into the mansion, right? The mansion being a symbol for the mind and all the different doors, all the different thoughts inside of John's mind that Morpheus kind of worked through and used it to get his ruby back. It also makes me kind of wonder, is there a little bit of a suggestion about the astral plane in the Sandman? If you can kind of raise or, maybe go lower, right? The unconscious down into this other world, this other plane of reality where all dreams are kind of connected. It kind of plays with that idea, which I love. It's something that Carl Jung, a famous psychoanalyst, Swiss psychoanalyst, talked about. He believed that all human beings were connected through what's called the collective unconscious. And so it kind of plays with that idea, but doesn't push it too much, just kind of leaves it as an interesting thought, which is kind of the way that Carl Jung sort of left it too. He believed in it a lot, but modern psychology really hasn't latched on to it. It's more of the spiritual and metaphysical side of the world, those who believe in those things that have really latched onto that idea, and they've got some things to point at. It's been talked about and considered for a very long time with us as human beings. Now, perhaps one of the most disturbing is Hal's dream. Hal's dream has him on a stage as he's laying in a bed looking at his own performance. He peels off a mask and then he peels off another one, revealing the sinew and the muscles underneath his face and his raw, fleshy eyeballs. Wonderful symbol. You may have seen this in a dream yourself of taking off the mask, right? Taking off your facade, this identity that you play for the world and seeing what's really underneath. Oftentimes we will play this role that we feel like we're supposed to play. We're on a stage, as you might say, and we have this role that we need to fit into, that society has placed us in, of the way that we contribute value. And so there's this fear about pulling off that mask and seeing the raw human being underneath. Will we still be accepted? Will we be loved? And you can see that kind of play out in Hal's dream. Now, another one that we see both in real life and in the Sandman is Lyda's experience with her passed away husband. Seeing someone who's passed away happens quite a lot in dreams. It's the struggle of your mind to try and process the change that's happened by them passing. In connections, in relationships, because they're such a part of what it means to be a human, human beings will actually almost lose a part of themselves when they lose a relationship. That connection becomes ingrained as a part of us. You know, we expect our friends, our support system, our network of relationships to always be there, and it almost becomes a part of our identity, right? That's why choosing your friends is so important, because you become your friends. Literally, they become a part of your identity. This is my friend group. This is who I am. This is how I fit. We as human beings, because we're so social, determine how we fit based on that relationship with our friends. And so when you dream about someone who's passed away, your mind is trying to say, oh, what insight, what advice, what leftover thoughts and feelings do I have from that relationship that I need to learn how to meet in another way? I mean, her husband's not there anymore. This changes her identity in society, especially since marriage is such a crucial cornerstone of our culture. She's having this existential crisis and she wants to go back. But Dream finally confronts her and says, you can't go back. You need to move forward. You need to reinvent your identity. And so you see that both in real life and in the Sandman. Now, one that probably made you laugh is Ken's dream. Ken and Barbie, love that. It's just such a stereotypical male-female name. It's the classic, almost unsettling, makes your stomach hurt, kind of like, ugh. Basic girl, basic guy, you know, kind of a meathead guy, kind of a ditzy girl is with those characters. And you can see Ken inside of his dream. He's getting a blowjob from this girl that he saw at the doctor's office, a nurse. And you see him locked outside of his Lamborghini without any clothes on. If you've ever had a dream like this, many of us have. It's one of the top dreams that we interpret. Being naked in public and being embarrassed is this fear about seeing for your raw self, about being seen by others for who you really are. And so all those things that we hide and cover up, our identity, our sort of claim to fame, right, is stripped away. And there we are naked. It's like, will we still be accepted? Are you strong in who you are underneath? And Ken struggles with this because it's toxic masculinity. He's got this Lamborghini, a symbol of confidence and control, right? Cars, that's what they mean, independence. And so he's trying to get back into his confidence, independence, status symbol, but there he is naked and open and being seen embarrassed for who he really is. He's not able to hide behind these tools that human beings hide behind. Now, that dream about cheating is also him kind of seeing a lack of commitment to his responsibilities, kind of that meathead toxic masculinity, if you know what I mean. Now, Barbie, on the other hand, has these wildly fantastical dreams where she's in this princess gown and there's this mystical, fluffy teddy bear sort of creature like a walrus tusks, woolly mammoth, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But many people have those type of dreams, very epic, very mystical and magical, and usually it's from a disconnect from actual reality. So you can see how that's mirrored in both of them and why those characters are almost sickening, right? Ken is this way and Barbie's this way. They're sickening examples of disconnected from reality, toxic masculinity, and not really grounded femininity. So if people have very fantastical dreams, your mind could just communicate with you in that way. That can be very normal for you and is not necessarily a bad indicator, but it can mean that you're a little bit off in space. You're a little bit ungrounded. Sometimes you're a little bit too magical and mystical with your thoughts and maybe need to be a little bit more practical. And you can see that with Barbie as well. Now, the last thing that I think is super important is the jumbled letters on the gate. And that was a beautiful nod to kind of the lucid dreaming community. Those who lucid dream or see letters, numbers in their dream, most of the time, now some people can, but most of the time you can't read and you can't read time inside of your dreams. And so that subtle detail was so great for someone who studies dreams because it wouldn't make sense for you to clearly see words and pictures inside of a dream. They're going to be jumbled. And the reason that is because the thinking part of your brain goes to sleep when you do. And so you can't use your thoughts. You have to use your emotions. Emotions don't read. thoughts read. That's why they're jumbled on the gate. So before we wrap up this episode, I want to take a moment to point out in episode 8, the question that Lyda has about her husband. Is this a ghost or is this a dream? And you can see how she becomes pregnant after having that dream with her husband. And you can see that pregnancy carries into her waking life. Pregnancy being a wonderful symbol for a new opportunity, but specifically a new identity, which makes sense as she's struggling with processing the grief from her husband. She becomes pregnant with a new identity inside of her. She's single now. She's a widow. And she has to reinvent who she is so she can overcome this experience and move forward into the future with her new identity. But you can see how it travels with her outside of the dream. And to me, that was the most heartwarming part because it asks this question: are dreams real? And the answer from the Sandman is yes. Your dreams are real. At DreamApp, being the chief dream scientist, I make it a point to talk with all of the dream experts and everyone on the team and really kind of hone in and almost be a little bit very aggressive about this idea. We do not use the term real life and dream life. There's no such thing as real life. Dreams are real. So we talk about waking life and dream life because there is a whole third of your life that is experienced through dreams, and it's the reality, the real reality, the real consciousness, dream consciousness of your mind working through its experiences, processing your emotions, and helping you heal and helping you move forward as a human being. It is not dream life and real life. It's dream life and waking life because both are important, and without them, you wouldn't be human. Thank you so much for watching this episode of DreamApp YouTube channel. My name again is Jesse Lyon, Chief Dream Scientist. Please hit that like button, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified every time there's new dream content that will answer your hardest hitting questions about emotions and what your mind's trying to tell you while you sleep. Thanks for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.